Hiring for your small business? If you're not looking for professionals on LinkedIn, you're looking in the wrong place. That's like looking for your car keys in a fish tank. LinkedIn helps you hire professionals you can't find anywhere else, even those who aren't actively searching for a new job but might be open to the perfect role. In a given month, over 70% of LinkedIn users don't even visit other leading job sites. So start looking in the right place. With LinkedIn, you can hire professionals like a professional. Post your free job on linkedin.com/spoken today.
Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile. With the price of just about everything going up during inflation, we thought we'd bring our prices down. So to help us, we brought in a reverse auctioneer, which is apparently a thing.
Mint Mobile Unlimited Premium Wireless. How to get 30, 30, bit to get 30, bit to get 20, 20, 20, bit to get 20, 20, bit to get 15, 15, 15, 15, just $15 a month? Sold!
Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
$45 up front for 3 months plus taxes and fees. Promo rate for new customers for limited time. Unlimited more than 40 gigabytes per month. Slows full terms at mintmobile.com.
Hi guys, welcome to this week's episode of Heavy Metal Tones with me, your podcast host, Tony Evans. This is episode 3 of a sort of mini-series I've been doing of the Turn of the Millennium Iron Maiden albums. We are ignoring, as I said right from the start, we're ignoring Brave New World because I've already reviewed that. This is the final one, the final frontier, in fact. Now, I have quite boldly gone on record in the last 2 episodes saying that before I listened to either Matter of Life or Death and Dance of Death, I was not a huge fan of either of them, and that my mind has turned around. And I have to agree, I've always sort of liked Dance of Death. I just hated the packaging and some of the concepts, but it has some absolute classic tracks in there. Now this one here, it really leaves me divided. I genuinely mean this because I'm not a fan of the Eddie. Straight away, the space theme Eddie, I'm not a big fan of. I think it's quite clumsy. I don't know why. It just does. I know that's not to do with the book. It's always to do with the music, but it just does it for me. I think the sound itself is... Look, I mean, don't want to give you it all the way right at the beginning, but yeah, some of it's a little bit, I don't know, a little bit flat for me. And I think it's definitely an album of 2 halves by a long way, actually. There's some really clever stuff in it, some really interesting rhythmic choices and composition and melodies, but it's just a little bit flat for me. Now, it's their 15th studio album. It's 76 minutes and 34 seconds long. It's their 3rd longest album up until that point, beaten by Book of Souls and Senjutsu. It was their last on EMI after 30 years partnership with them, which is incredible. And it was their longest gap at that point between albums, was 4 years between the previous one and this one. It garnered great reviews on release. It actually went to number 1 in the UK and number 4 in America on the American charts. And it was the first album since A Fear of the Dark from 1992 that went to number 1, which... it's pretty good. Number 1 in 28 countries as well. I think that's predominantly after the fact, and we'll talk about this in a minute, the brilliant use of the internet to sell their albums, and the fact there was a 4-year gap. And also a very shrewd thing, whether it was deliberately done by Ron Smallwood and the boys, or whether it was... accidental, the rumor went around that this was going to be their very last album, because Steve had said in the past that he was 15 albums and he was happy with 15 and done, right? And they called it the final frontier, didn't they? So, there's all these conspiracy theorists saying, oh, it's the final album, it's the final frontier, 15 albums and no more. And I'm really happy that this wasn't their very last album, because going out on this, for me, would have been a bit of a fizzler. Anyway, I said, I don't want to sway you right early on in the episode, but I'm still struggling to enjoy it, to be honestly truthful. Now, this is one of the few albums that Steve has got. Steve Harris at bass has got the writing credits on all of the songs, which is, again, not something that he's done a lot. Adrian was saying in an interview that Steve now these days, well, back then, liked to sort of just arrange other people's music. So they'd come in with their piece of music and he'd arrange it. He'd play with the melodies. He'd work on the lyrics. He very rarely brought his own songs to the recording a process of this album, and I think it sort of shows, slightly. And I think that's also why I'm feeling a little bit flat by it, because Steve's input on this album isn't as great as it usually is, and you can sort of feel it slightly. I don't know, his fingers are all over the arranging and all over the but it's him not, I don't know, it's just his concepts so often are the killers on the album, right? I thought it was a bit mischievous calling it the final. I remember thinking, this can't be the final one, surely, Anyway, it was recorded at Compass Point Studios in the Bahamas, in Nassau, which was where they recorded back in the 80s. So the first time since the 80s they recorded there. We've, again, with Kevin Shirley producing and Steve co-producing. It was an interesting time. Apparently they really had a lot of fun going back to the old haunt. Not much had changed. Probably less rats this time though. And they sort of finished the mixing in LA. I think it was, have I written? Yes. And California. And Bruce flew in, did the vocals over a couple of days and flew out again to do his big world tour, whatever he was doing, his solo album at the time. Adrian popped in to put his ear over some of the tracks, and of course he didn't like everything he heard, but then no one likes everything they hear when it comes to their own music. And the other Nico and the rest of the band came in and do bits and cleaned up some bits and pieces and went back. The other four albums where Steve's had all writing tracks are Killers, Brave New World, and A Matter of Life and Death. And honestly, the two of those are absolute bangers from beginning to end. I have changed my mind on A Matter of Life and Death, but that's sort of neither here nor there. Now, the only track on this album that he actually wrote all himself completely was Where the Wind Blows, and we'll get to that later on because it's an emotionally tough song to listen to, a very interesting story, and how someone could put this to music and do it so well is beyond me. Like, even if I didn't like this album, and I don't really, to be honest, I've said that, I keep saying it, but there's always one or two songs, one song at least, that's going to grab you. And When the Wind Blows is the one that really holds me in a spell. And there's a reason to that, which we'll get to when we talk about the song itself. The artwork was done by Melvin Grant. He's he's illustrated for Terry Pratchett, and he does a kids' books illustrations. It's a space Eddie made up of all sorts of different bits of Alien. I mean, it's taking its key from The Thing and Alien. There's sort of, in the pictures in the booklet of the CD and on the record, there's sort of Geiger-esque kind of Alien. I'd rather have had a proper Geiger-esque Alien than this hodgepodge of, he's holding this sort of key thing, doesn't fit in his hand, doesn't look quite right. It's this massive hand, this tiny little key. I don't know. It just feels clumsy to me. I don't know whether we're rushed to do it. I'm not sure. But Nico said that the music on this album is a more straightforward rock and roll mix. It's a pretty long album. It does take some chewing to get through. That's why I think it's a product of two halves. It's like a game of two halves, as they say, right? The track listing is Satellite 15, The Final Frontier, 8 minutes 40. El Dorado at 6 minutes 49. Mother of Mercy at 5:20. Coming Home at 5:52. The Alchemist at 4:29. Isle of Avalon 9:06. Starblind at 7:48. There's The Talisman at 9:03. The Man Who Would Be King at 8:22. And When the Wind Blows at 10:59, which is the fourth longest song up until that point for them. And you can sort of feel the progressiveness coming out in them from this album, because from here on in, they're very progressive. The sound that Maiden put on their albums has a real, sorry, I'm just looking for my notes, a real progressiveness, a real meatiness, a real sense of purpose. Hang on. Oh, here's my tag. It's certainly, yeah, I don't know. I've gone blank there for a second. I went blank. The two singles, there was never actual singles released off the album. This is where we're going to talk about the cleverness of the marketing, because it was all based around their website and leaking music online, definitely using, I think for the first time, really using the internet to sell their product, because they released like Satellite 15, The Final Frontier, well, the last part of it, because the beginning is all sort of like just a melodic instrumental, and then El Dorado again was sort of, you had to go to the website to see it. Interestingly enough, The Final Frontier was filmed in Rendlesham Forest, which is the site of a very, very famous, probably the most famous, if not possibly, the most famous UFO sighting in the world, outside of, or particularly in England, but definitely outside of Area 52. I'm not going to go into the full story of Rendlesham because it's a really complicated story, but this is to say that a lot of military personnel saw what they saw. There's some brilliant podcasts out there. Google Rendlesham Forest, a UFO, and you'll get a really interesting read or a good listen, because if you're into that kind of thing. So I'd like to think the lads knew they were doing that. It was a sort of side note that they were recording this video for one of the singles. Sorry, it's either Satellite 15 or El Dorado, one of the two. Anyway, shot there. It's just a nice homage or wink back to the concept of the album, even though that blatantly they said it's not a concept album. Like A Matter of Life and Death, it's a very loose concept album. It's about, for me, it's a concept of discovery and of finding your way and that sort of thing. It's apart from the last couple of tracks, but that's what it feels like to me, and I think it has that in the lyric to it. Now, sound wise, before we get on to each individual track, I think it has this, irks me slightly and sits in as possibly my most less listened to album of all of their catalogue, which is heretical to say, I'm sure, is that it just has this, I don't know, it's a bit thin, the dynamic is a bit lifeless. It's probably one or two songs too long, and it sort of doesn't quite know where it's going. It meanders a bit. Musically, it's Maiden, right? So I don't need to explain to you, listeners, if you're Maiden listeners particularly, I don't need to explain to you. You know quite well what you're getting with Maiden, right? You're getting a well-produced, very complex, beautifully put together product that's heavy and melodic and tuneful and thought-provoking. But this one has this sort of, and when I say this, dear American listeners, don't take this the wrong way when I say this, but it has a real, for me, it has this real sun-baked Californian American feel. Now, is that because it was recorded in the Bahamas and then finished in California? I don't know. It could be. But then again, the 80s albums didn't have that feel, but then also the 80s would have had different desks. I'm not sure if the same desk is there at Compass Point anymore. I'm not sure if the Neve desk that was there is still there. But either way, it has this sort of, no, it just has this sort of, dare I say, radio friendly without sounding, I don't know, is it because it's a product to be played over the internet, one of the first real albums to sort of take hold of in the streaming era? Is it that? Is it the fact that we have to think about bit rates now when they were making this album and not other things like physical media? Maybe. I mean, these are uncharted times, 2010. I mean, it's only 14 years ago, and to some people say that's not that long ago, but in technology, it's a long time ago. And if you think you listened to the albums before that were recorded like Matter of Life and Death, in one take in studio, and no pass-throughs and stuff, different sound completely, chunkier, heavier, more Maiden-esque, I feel, in Matter of Life and Death, and even Dance of Death. But this just has that, I don't know, it feels disjointed and directionless, with a, I don't know, package that just isn't, I don't know. Anyway, it could have been that they just needed to get that one album out, the last album, because it's a contractual EMI album, the last one. You don't know. It could be. I don't know. There are those sort of times in music where bands will push out an album to get out of a contract. Like one of my favorite Fish. He had to get out of his contract with EMI. He was contracted to do certain amount of albums, and so he made the like a best of sort of his favorite hits was his kids sort of cover versions, and it flopped. It absolutely sank. But I think he did it just because he needed to get it done. It doesn't matter what he put out. I actually think it's a brilliant album, personally. It's one of the best versions of Faith Healer by the sensational Alex Harvey band that you'll ever hear. It's on that album. Anyway, and Time and a Word by Yes is on there, a cover version of that, which I love because it's got Steve Howe on guitar on it. But anyway, that's a sidetrack, Tony. Get back to where you were. So, thin American sound. You might say, well, Tony, why are you bothering and go by track by track? Well, it's the format of the show, isn't it? I like to talk about the product and then go track by track and talk about them. I won't be talking too much about the musicality of it because, again, you know what you're going to get with Maiden. You just know what you get. You don't. It's not unquantifiable. You know what I mean? It's almost empirical. If you know what I mean. That you're going to get what you're going to get with that. Is that the right term? Empirical? I'm sure it is. Anyway, enough for me this side. We're going to go and get myself a fresh drink, and when I come back the other side, we'll go track for track on Final Frontier, one of my albums that I'm not sure about from Iron Maiden. Anyway, we'll go track for track because there's one absolute banger right at the end which I want to talk about more in depth. Okay, bye for now.
Hey, I'm Ryan Reynolds. At Mint Mobile, we like to do the opposite of what Big Wireless does. They charge you a lot, we charge you a little. So naturally, when they announced they'd be raising their prices due to inflation, we decided to deflate our prices due to not hating you. That's right. We're cutting the price of Mint Unlimited from $30 a month to just $15 a month. Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
$45 up front for 3 months plus taxes and fees. Promo rate for new customers for limited time. Unlimited more than 40 gigabytes per month. Slows full terms at mintmobile.com.
Hiring for your small business? If you're not looking for professionals on LinkedIn, you're looking in the wrong place. That's like looking for your car keys in a fish tank. LinkedIn helps you hire professionals you can't find anywhere else, even those who aren't actively searching for a new job but might be open to the perfect role. In a given month, over 70% of LinkedIn users don't even visit other leading job sites. So start looking in the right place. With LinkedIn, you can hire professionals like a professional. Post your free job on linkedin.com/spoken today.
Welcome back, guys, to part 2 of Heavy Metal Tones. This is a walk through the Final Frontier, the 15th studio album by Iron Maiden. As I said right at the beginning of the show, not one that I often go back to, and revisiting it hasn't really enamored me with the album. It is an album of 2 parts. I think the first side is a weaker side, and then it comes into an absolute crashing banger right at the end. But almost worth the price of the album from the start. Now, first off, we open up with Satellite 15, The Final Frontier. And for 4 and a bit minutes, you get this, what I can only describe as Russian science fiction soundtrack music. If any of you are aware of any of the sort of odd 60s and 70s Russian science fiction movies, or some of those really interesting Italian ones with soundtracks by Goblin and Marconi and all that sort of stuff. It's got this Morosino, sorry. It's got all these sort of static, angular jabs of music, and you can hear them scratching the guitar, the strings with a pick. It's got this sort of wave of coming and going bass and this sort of strange, otherworldly guitar piece. And to me, this is brilliant. To open an album for 4 minutes like this is very brave, and is only the sign of a band that knows that they can do anything they really want. No problems. Anything they want creatively. And I think this is, for when I first heard this, I thought, God, this is it. This is everything that I want from a Maiden album. This is the progressiveness. This is interesting. It's a bit, the mix feels to me distant. I said at the first half that it's a bit thin. It feels like I'm in another room when I'm listening to it. They're playing in a room with a door slightly ajar, or through a window. That's what it feels like when I listen to it. I mean, I know that could sound a bit odd to you, but it's how it sounds like to me. I'm not engaged with the band in this album, whereas with other albums, I feel I'm sort of sitting amongst the group while they're playing in a room. This feels a little bit distant. Anyway, and that's probably why it's not my favourite. But yeah, this happens for 4 minutes, and then we get a little bit of lyric from Bruce, and then bang, you're into this first pseudo single off the album, and it's got sing along lyrics. It's written by Steve Harris and Adrian Smith. I try to call the earth's command, desperation in my voice. I'm drifting way off course now with very little choice. I mean, it is a thing about, this is science fiction basically. It's I'm stranded in space. I'm lost without trace. I haven't a chance of getting away. Too close to the sun, I surely will burn like Icarus before me, or so legend goes. So, I mean, again, it's like that's a nice nod back to the fight of Icarus. See he flew too close to the sun with these wings of wax, and they melted, and he fell and died. I think of my life, reliving my past. There's nothing but wait till my time comes. Like, I've had a good life. I do it again. Maybe I'll come back sometime afresh. For I have lived my life before. I have no regrets, but I wish I could talk to my family to tell them one last goodbye. So, I mean, it's one of those sort of, again, a science fiction trope, isn't it? Lost in space, the scaredness of being lost in the deep void, no way of getting out, but no way of saying goodbye. Same way submariners would still feel the same way, or pilots, but it is that sort of it does have a sense of claustrophobia to it, and also a sense of expansion because it's in space. But yeah, I mean, I like it, and it starts off with that banging form, and it's a really interesting instrumental music, and then it goes into this sort of, I don't know, sort of would be help me, I'm in space kind of SOS thing. But you know, still musically, it's really good. It's got some. Nico's good. I mean, one thing that I will say about this album is Nico's drums on this are really nice. I mean, the mix of his cymbals is really clear and crisp, really clear. Another thing about this album is I don't hear Steve's bass as much in it. It feels like he's not really there. It's a bit thin bass wise. I could be wrong. It might be the way I'm listening to it, but I've got it on vinyl and I listen to through very expensive speakers and stereo, and I still feel that he's missing slightly. Is that because he's more interested in the melodies and the writing than he is writing himself? Who knows? Possibly. That might be another reason why I don't really stick to it. And then the second song is El Dorado, a 6 minutes 49, written by Adrian Smith, Steve Harris, and Bruce Dickinson. Now, Bruce has come out and said this song is about, when I first heard it years ago, I generally thought it was just about El Dorado, the conquistadors' hunt for gold and the destruction of the native peoples for the greed of gold and for the good of Spain and for God, apparently. But no, this isn't. According to Bruce, this is about people... because we remember the 2008 way back. Those that weren't born then, sorry, but those that will remember, we had the recession in 2008, if you remember, quite a bad one. And he says it's based on that, the no way out, the desperation of not having, struggling to make money. I don't see that in this lyric. But, you know, if that's what he thinks it is, and that's what he says it is, I mean, he wrote the lyric, or wrote most of it. I've got to tell you a story of on a cold winter's night. You'll be sailing for glory before you know it's right. Now, that's the opening lyric, but this has a very good take away Bruce's vocal on it. It's got a lovely stepping melody, so it steps. You know, it's got this nice sort of movement. It flows in and out. It's not a straightforward rock and roll 4/4 number, typical of Maiden. It's got some interesting time signatures. Here I feel that Bruce's voice is lacking slightly. I think it's stretching himself in the register too high. I've told you that before. I think he does that sometimes. He just tries to be number of the beast all the time, and it sometimes you can lose the clarity of the vocal. I'm the jester with no tears, I'm playing on your fears, I'm a trickster smiling underneath the mask of love and death. The eternal lie I've told about, the pyramids of gold, I've got you hooked at every turn, your money's left to burn. So, again, you can see what he's saying is an allegory, isn't it? You know, banks taking their money, saying we're going to make you more, and then losing it all through bad investments. So that's, you know, I mean, the chorus is, El Dorado, come and play. El Dorado, step this way. Take a ticket for the ride. El Dorado, streets of gold. See, my ship is oversold. You've got one last chance to try. Again, is it an allegory of the stock market? Probably is. Not bad. I can see why they picked it as a single. That it's quite easy to have it. Well, pseudo single. 2 tracks off the album that opened it up. They're probably the most radio friendly of the two. Of the whole album. And then we get Mother of Mercy. Now, Mother of Mercy is, again, it says it all in the title, Mother of Mercy, written by Steve Harris and Adrian Smith, 5 minutes 20 long. This has a real yearning chance of being an absolute classic Maiden track for me. This could be something that really stood up with things like Passchendaele and Alexander the Great and all those absolute bangers that I love, but it just feels thin. Bruce is trying to sound sorrowful and he's adding a bit of thespianism to it, but it I don't know. I don't go back to it. It's got a very catchy sing-along chorus. It really does. It adds, Mother of Mercy, taking my last breath. Mother of Mercy, Angel of Pain. Mother of Mercy, taking my last breath. Some say you are a lost cause. Some say you're a saint. Just being here is an act of suffering and restraint. Walk down the long dark road to ruin panic. To ruin panic not. I'll die a lonely death, of that I'm certain of. So it's about, reading this one, to me it sounds a bit like someone at the end of their life, worried about the journey onwards and being on their own and needing someone to be there with them that may not be as merciful, that maybe, accept the consequences, repent for what I have done. You tell me what is certain, but I'll tell you what is true. You tell me what is honesty when all around is death and cruelty. So, it could be a stab at religion. It probably is a stab at religion. They've done that before. I know that Nico is, as I mentioned before, born again Christian. And so this could be something, even though he's not got his name on the writing, could have been part of his, his input. But for me, it's a bit of a filler. And I can't believe I'm saying that, really. And then we're coming on to Coming Home. Now, Coming Home, for me, should have been a lead track into the album. And I think it should have come, if I'm thinking really honestly, before El Dorado. Because it's actually one of the best songs on the album, written by Smith, Harris and Dickinson. It's 5 minutes 52. It's got a really, really adventurous feel to it. It has a feel of swashbuckling space journey. It has a feeling of voyages into the unknown. It has a feeling of like the Star Trek, the 5-year mission. It feels like they're trying to get back. It has a real yearn to be, as it says, back home. And the music even feels that way. It has a real dynamism to it. It's one of the best songs on the album. It's when I started before you're shining in the early morning sun, when I feel the engines roar and I think of what we've done. Oh, the bittersweet reflection as we kiss the earth goodbye, as the waves and echoes of the towns become ghosts of time. And it's the way this is what Maiden sort of is about. The way that Bruce delivers the lines in this track, and the way that the band encompass his melodies and his vocal movements, and the way that the dynamism of each line that punches out is what makes this a really great song. And it's one of those ones I know they played live a few times. I love it. As I told you, I think the album is an album of two halves, and this should easily have been opening the album or second track anyway. But it is a brilliant track off this album. So I'm not double standards. I'm still not a big fan of the album, but this one is really good. Great lyrics on it. Our land of birth to Albion's land, coming home when I see the runway lights in the misty dawn of the night is fading fast. Coming home, far away as the vapor trails alight. Where I've been tonight, I'll not stay. Curving on the edge of daylight till slips into the void. Waited in the long night dreaming till the sun is born again. So it's about space travel. It's about probably going to the moon or doing orbit. The fact he uses I love the way he uses. They do it a lot, Maiden. And particularly Bruce, the term Albion, which is used as the name of England a lot. But in a long time past, Albion is what we would call. It's why you get teams like West Bromwich Albion. Those who love their football, English football, you'll know about them. All right, this one's for Dave. There's a shout out for West Bromwich Albion, Dave. It means home basically, and it has got a great sense of it. This could have been, I reckon, this track here would have been really good on Book of Souls. It has a real Book of Souls feel to it. You never know. It might have actually been destined for the Book of Souls. Who knows? And then we move into The Alchemist. Yannick Gers gets a shout out first here, first one. With Harris and Dickinson, it's 4 minutes 29. Another, kind of track for me. Musically, it's quite punchy. It's Maiden-esque. It still sounds like they've recorded it in a different room to me. The lyrics good though. Stranger than the comet as it streaks across the sky, stranger than the truth I know before my open eyes. I have dealt in mysteries and trickery of light to entertain, looked into the abyss and called it by its name. So obviously it's about alchemy and the magic and mystery of changing base metals into gold and sort of old mystic magic. It feels like a Yannick Gers track. This to me, bang the microphone. This to me sounds like a Yannick Gers piece of music. It's the sort of thing I would imagine him to write. He's actually a very, very, very gifted guitarist and gets a lot of stick for on stage. All he does is spin his guitar around his head. But he can still play, and he still plays unbelievably well, right? Gather round the aimless and the feckless and the lame. Hear the master summon up the spirits by their names. A really nice chorus. Again, this is probably the best thing about this song is the chorus. Bruce's enunciation is beautiful. It's a clever piece of music, but it's nothing. It's not what I would put on. I wouldn't go out and say, "Wow, The Alchemist, I've got to play that a few times." But it's there, and I feel here we're maybe starting to turn the corner, because next is Isle of Avalon, written by Smith and Harris, 9 minutes and 6 seconds. This is another hint to the homelands, the Isle of Avalon. Now, that is where I'm sure, if I'm remembering correctly, that's where Arthur is meant to be buried, is not Avalon. And it's sort of a mystical place, Arthurian legend, a place of enshrouded in mists and Celtic magic and sort of mysticism of wizards and witches and sort of Macbethian kind of imagery, right? And really does, at 9 minutes and 6 seconds, this is a long song that has some lovely passages of music in it, but it really lyrically is very dense, and it's the sort of thing that a lot of time in the past they would have ended their album on. Now, one of the criticisms of this album is that it takes a little while to get your teeth into it, and it is a bit of a marathon to hold on and take it to the end without getting frustrated. And I feel that sometimes with this album. There's another criticism that I could probably agree with. But this has got some great, when the way that that Bruce delivers a lyric in this, and it's timeless in this one. Mother Earth, I hear you, sacrifice now united. Brilliant. Opens up with, I can hear them floating on the wind, immortal souls, their weeping saddens me. Mother Earth, your time is near, awaken, just the seed is sown and reaped. Through the western isle, I hear the dead awaken, rising slowly to the call of Avalon. The cauldron of the head of Unwin, laced with every dark around its edge with pearl and destiny. All my days I waited for the sign, the one that brings me closer to the Isle of Avalon. So I'm just going to pause for a second and make sure I have got that correct. One moment. Back in a second. Yes, it is. As I thought, it is the Arthurian legend. It first appeared in Geoffrey Monmouth's 1136 History Regilius Arthur. Historia Regilium Britannia, as a place of magic where Arthur's sword Excalibur was made, and later where Arthur was taken to recover from being gravely wounded at the Battle of Calman. And since then, the island has become a symbol of Arthurian mythology, similar to the castle of Camelot. Yes. I think that, again, it's the sort of song that they would end the album on normally, one of those sort of epics, an Arthurian epic, And I think that they are brave, not, pushing their boundaries on this album, I think, to be honest with you. There we go. Albion. So it is an alternative name to the Great Britain. The oldest name attained to the British Isles is Albion. I thought so. Anywho. So, yes. Good piece of music. Has that sort of swampy, misty, epic feel that Maiden are very good at. The thing with this album is I think they've wrapped too many epics in one album. I think that's where also is my chagrin. Is that there's not a breather. You one crackingly long epic song after another, and this is coming from someone who loves prog, right? Who loves I couldn't sit there for a 27-minute Genesis track. It's like Supper's Ready. But when I go into that, I know I'm getting that. With Maiden, I want a little bit of lightness sometimes in there, and this sort of sits. I mean, it is a very long lyric. And then Starblind, written by Smith, Harris, and Dickinson at 7 minutes 48. This is another one of those science fiction, as a la the concept of the album, and lost in space and finding yourself kind of concepts, and it feels tinny. I don't know if that's the right thing to say. It's a bit thin, it's a bit cold, a bit angular, a bit rushed, if I have to be brutally honest. The lyric is, take my eyes, the things I've seen in this world coming to an end. My reflection fades, I'm weary of this early bones and skin. You may pass through me and leave me no trace I have, no mortal face. Solar winds are whispering, you can hear me call. So, Starblind, again, maybe a book that they've read. I mean, it's obviously about the void of space, the destiny, the endless endless eons of the void of space and the brightness of the suns, and very much like polar explorers. I think really could probably even look at that. It could. I mean, I think I've heard of a science fiction movie called Starblind, but I could be wrong. Because there's lyrics in here that sound like it probably is from that. The preacher loses face with Christ. Religion's cruel device is gone. Empty flesh and hollow bones make pacts of love, but die alone. The crucible of pain will forge the blanks of sin. Begin again. You are free to choose a lie to live, or one that's left to lose. And again, I'm not giving this justice when I speak the lyrics, but Bruce does sing that particular line really well. It does add a real depth to it. So if anyone knows what Starblind is, a book, I looked, but I couldn't find any direct references to it. But it's again a long lyric. It's got a lot of religious connotations in it. I mean, it's a bloody long lyric for again another epic. 7 minutes by no means is an epic track length, but it's certainly an epic in the amount of words and imagery stashed into this piece of music. It does have a very windswept and distant, 1,000-yard stare feel to it, but I don't know, it feels like filler. And then we get The Talisman by Yannick Gers and Steve Harris. This one is a 9-minute one again, so a real epic of an album. This one feels like a Gers song. As I said, Alchemist is exactly the same kind of feel. When I stand and look about the poor and contemplate my life, will I ever see my countrymen again? As the captain calls us to the deck, I take my things and walk. To the harbour side, I glance back one more last time. So, again, it's about going to war. I think it's about that last look at the land that you're going to leave to fight, to free. Is he a pilot? Are they? I mean, if it's this read, fleeing our nation, our problems, we live behind. Ships by the tenfold sail onto the tide. So it's boats, of course. So we are pleased to be out embracing the open sea, free from many troubles and free from from thee. Inheritors unfulfilled reason behind us. We flee from what is not, is will be. We flee the earth and face our harsh reality. With your death below mist that hangs on the sea. So, I mean, it may not be about going to war, but it's about leaving and running away. It's about fleeing, isn't it? Are they fleeing in a spaceship to a different planet because Earth is dying? Are they just, jumping on a boat to sail the world and to be on a merchant navy? Who knows? It's about seeking fortune, looking for the lands of their dreams, riding waves and storms. Yeah, I mean, it's a bit. Anyway, but then we go to the two last tracks on this album, and The Man Who Would Be King by Murray and Harris. This is one of Murray's first on the album, I believe. 8 minutes and 28 seconds long. This has a real Gilgamesh-y, epic-y kind of feel to it. A real written in stone or on some kind of parchment. Could be a Arthurian, could be Tolkien. It's another one that you could easily end an album on. Any of these last four songs could have ended an album on it. As he travels on the beast of burden, moving along the mountainside, as he gazes looking down at the valley, no regrets but his pride. And this, again, the way that Bruce, that's why I said it's an album of two halves. His last four songs are, particularly this one here. His vocal delivery is beautiful. And you can see it's sort of a Murray song as well. Has that bluesy driven riff in the music. And again, it's a very dense lyric. I'd like to read you the whole lot, but you'd get bored shitless, and you'd say you're not doing it justice, and I don't. I do it every week, don't I? Reading out the lyric, and I either mumble over the words, or I don't do it justice. Anyway, but there are some just lovely passages in here. Pushed himself to the limits. He had to strive all that harder. For the things in life. But what the cost of giving now? His life, his time, are only things he has. The only things he has. Life is not a rehearsal. All he has is one chance to get it right. Leaving reality is the only way to know. Now is that? I mean, these are quite dark lyrics. If you read, you could read other things into it, which I'm not going to read. I don't think I should read into it. He tries to make his peace with God. All is forgiven, but is left a little late. Trying something that he's not, it's impossible to change such a lot. He's taken someone's life away. There's not a day goes by. He regrets what he's done. He should have found another way, but the good book says an eye for an eye. So, is it about the frailties of royal life in days gone by when you would be killed by your own brother just to be king? Could it be that? Could it be him on his deathbed recanting his sins for his filial, destroying his family just to step over them? Who knows? But it is quite a dramatic piece of music and sits there with all the epics that they do at the end. As I said, it's quite a crazy album. But then we get to the very last song. Now this one here, it's got Harris's own on it. It's his only piece of music. Now this is why, strap in listeners, this is why you come to Maiden. This is why you sit down and you forgive some of their sins in some of the later albums, as in, a bit flabby, a bit one-dimensional, whatever they have been in this album. You get When the Wind Blows. Now, every Maiden has an epic. As I said, this one seems to have several, but this one truly is up there with Mariner, Passchendaele, Alexander the Great, all of those fantastic ending tracks and albums that just leave you wanting more. Empire of the Clouds and stuff like that. for me, the last album, it was the Druid song. Oh my God! See, I'm, I'm getting old and I can't remember songs. Brain freeze. You know which one I mean. Anyway, When the Wind Blows. So let me get my notes because I've got a lot of connection with this particular story. So it was originally released in 1982 by Raymond Briggs. Now, Raymond Briggs is one of my favorite illustrators. He illustrated one of my favorite books of all time, which is Fungus the Bogeyman, which came out in '77. I remember buying it when it came out. Well, my brother bought it for me, so we're at Fenwick in Brent Cross, or Phoenix in Brent Cross, at the toy department upstairs, which, by the way, is no longer there, which is sad. It was made into a film in 1986. This is When the Wind Blows. If anyone doesn't know Raymond Briggs's illustrative style, they will, because they would have come across it somewhere, either with the Snowman, that with that terrible Alan Jones song, Walking in the Air, the Christmas, Father Christmas. He's done a lot. I mean, so much stuff. But his illustrative style is very unique, and you know it when you see it. And When the Wind Blows is about an old couple, retired, living in a village outside in the country in England, out in the sticks, and they don't have access to internet. This is 82, right? So the husband would go to the library every day and read the newspaper because there was a war between Russia and Afghanistan, and this is during the era of nuclear war, and we were all terrified that we were going to be blown to smithereens, right? I remember waking up having nightmares about the end of the world and the mushroom cloud and all this sort of stuff, and my mum hiding underneath. I remember mum hiding underneath the shelves at the local supermarket when the siren was tested, and I looked around and she was gone, and then she was grabbing my leg, and she used to call me Atty. That was her nickname for me, and she said, "Atty, get underneath under here," and I got under with her because she thought the world was going to end, because she was a child of the war and air raid sirens. It was a time when, people look back now and we think we're worried about Russia now, not in the same way as we were worried then. This was, it was on everyone's lips all the time, and we had government books put through the mail on how to survive a nuclear attack, and how to make a shelter, and we had threads, which is absolutely terrifying. I'd like to say that no one should watch that program, and if they can watch that program and think, well, what's the problem, then there's something wrong with you, because it was terrifying. It might be Gen Xers, I don't know, but we Gen Xers really terrified us, right? Anyway, the book is, so this old man, he comes back from the library and tells his lovely wife that we're going to build a shelter. So they get all the supplies together. They go by the manual. And lo and behold, telling a short story, long story short, the worst happens, and England is struck with a nuclear weapon or two. And they are in their shelter, and they're far enough away from the main blast to not damage them, but the fallout gets to them. And while he's, they sadly mistake an earthquake for the fallout finishing. That's what they think, and they go outside, and of course they get radiation poisoning, and Hilda, his wife, dies slowly, and he knows there's no end. He knows there's no way out, that husband, and he gets into the paper bag. They're told to get in paper bags to protect themselves. And he gets in with her, and he was going to recite the Lord's Prayer, but instead of that, right at the end, as he's dying, he recites into the valley of the road, the 600, the Tennyson poem, and they die together. And for me, it's an extremely emotional, I'm really feeling quite teary now, extremely emotional song. because it was something that I thought of all the time. In fact, when I went back to England a couple of years ago, I genuinely was terrified that I would be in England and not with my wife and family and cat, if the balloon went up, as they would say. So, you have these thoughts of fear and loneliness, and you can see where this song really is something special, and something that, for all my moaning about this album, Steve's genius, his utter genius, is being able to take the simplest of books and short stories and make them into something poignant and musical, and adding a dimension of extra thought to it. So if you've got this far in my podcast and you think, should I still listen to this album? Yeah, do it. Even if you love it, and I'm not a big fan, but you go, wow, this is amazing, I don't see what you're talking about. When you get to When the Wind Blows, I'd really like to see you not get a tear in your eye. Really, really, mate. Honestly, guys. And it's really beautiful the way, if you strip off the lyric and just listen to it, the music, it's a cultured, sophisticated piece of arrangement. It's Steve Harris all over. Wonderful. Death of the Celts, that's the song I remember. It's like Death of the Celts. It is absolutely spectacular. And it's a great, have you heard what they said on the news today? Have you heard that what is coming to us all? Like, it's just this sort of lovely lament that the world as we know it will be coming to an end. Have you heard? Have you heard? He sees them in the distance where the darkened clouds roll. He can feel the tension in the atmosphere. He would look in the mirror, see an old man now. Does it matter? They survive somehow. If they survive somehow, so he's thinking, we're old. We've had our bit. Does it matter? Should we really survive? Should we try to survive? Again, that's another beautiful thing about Raymond Briggs, and another great thing about Steve Harris is that he pulls more allegory and more meaning out of the words of the book, and they're illustrated. They're not books as in like they are. Raymond Briggs is an illustrator, so these are graphic novels. They say there's nothing we can be done about the situation. They say there's nothing we can be done at all. To sit and wait around for something to occur. Did you know? Did you know? As he stares across the garden, looking at the meadows, and wonders if they'll ever grow again. The desperation of the situation getting graver, getting ready when the wind blows. Oh God. Sorry, I'm getting shaky just thinking this song. He just does it. He carries everything into the shelter, not a fuss. Getting ready when moment comes. He has enough supplies to last him for a year or two. Good to have, because you never know. They tell us nothing that we don't already know. They tell us nothing that is really ready to read at all. They only fill us with the stuff they want. Did you know? Did you know? He's nearly finished with the preparations for the day. He's getting tired. That'll do for now. They are preparing for every worst to come, getting ready for when the wind blows. He sees the pictures on the wall. It's falling down, upside down. He sees a teardrop from his wife roll down her face, saying grace. And right at the end, when they found them, had their arms around each other, the tins of poison lying nearby their clothes. The day they both mistook an earthquake for the fallout, just another when the wind blows. Oh, I've just got the shivers. Absolute shivers. Oh, sorry. Let's pause for a second. Hang on. Genuinely. Sorry. There's very few pieces of music. I'm crying, actually. There's very few genuine pieces of music that... Anyway. That bring me to tears, and this actually is one of them. I will never own the book, the graphic novel. I won't have it in the house. It means it's too dark for me. I get memories of my mother, as I said, scrambling under the lowest shelf of Tesco's under the sugar bags, grabbing my ankle and trying to save me from the what she would have thought was the Nazis. My dear mum, living in absolute fear of Armageddon on a daily basis. It sort of just disappeared. It just became something that we all just forgot about. It seems to be. I've always forgot about it, or we deliberately ignoring it. But it was a terrifying time, and this graphic novel is a beautiful piece of art, and the song sums it up, absolutely wonderfully. And for all my brashness about the earlier in the album, I didn't like this and I didn't like that, and it's not my kind of thing, and it's still an amazing album because you get to the end and you get to the the classics, you get to this track, and it makes 60 odd minutes of up and down kind of music really worth it. It doesn't mean you skip to this track and only listen to this track. Please, listeners, do listen to the album in its entirety. It does have some ups. It has its faults, like all of us. But this album, without this song, this album, it would be something I wouldn't even probably put on, to be honest. But this is, unbelievable. Sorry about that crying. It just all of a sudden, looking at the lyric and then staring out my window at my garden where I record, when I had beautiful trees and the lovely Australian bush and the hillsides and the sunshine, and you wouldn't think that only a matter of 40 years ago, 42 years ago, this was considered, this could have all been gone because some petty, stupid, macho, muscle flexing. Anyway, I don't want to go and be too political. That's the end of it. Sorry, guys. That's my hour up. Thank you for listening. Wow, I didn't expect myself to go down that rabbit hole at the end. Tell me what you think of the album. I'd love you to come onto my Facebook and give me some feedback, or YouTube channel, or or feedback on Spotify. That always helps, and YouTube. No, I said YouTube. I mean iTunes. Feedback's good, negative or positive. I don't really mind. Next week's one is going to be a completely different tangent. So I hope you enjoyed this week's one. Hope you enjoyed my little trip down the turn of the millennium Maiden albums and the revisits, because I've enjoyed it. I really have enjoyed it. With all its ups and downs, it's been really positive. Anyway, bye for now, guys. Talk to you next week.